Welcome back to the Pursuit Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about serverless. Before we jump in, a quick thank you to our sponsors, Neximo. They provide APIs that let developers, and I guess any technologist, incorporate SMS, voice, authentication, or a whole host of other really great functionality into their projects. You can find out more about what they do at neximo.com, or if you want to thank them for sponsoring the podcast, find them on Twitter at NeximoDev. I'm your host, Jessica Rose. Today I'm here with
Anthony Stanley. I'm the organizer of the Serverless London user group and Serverless Days in London.
So all serverless all the time, and we're going to be talking about, drumroll, serverless. So if somebody's, let's just say hypothetically, our dear listener is a new technologist or they've been busy, they've never heard the phrase serverless. What's the deal?
If you're completely new to technology, serverless, you'll probably be a little bit of a loss to exactly what it means. So essentially, serverless is just the ability to build applications without having to worry about the underlying infrastructure and underlying platforms. You know, a provider looks after that for you. It's serverless in the respect that you don't have to worry about servers. It's not serverless in the respect that there aren't servers there. They're just not your concern, essentially.
So serverless as in no servers to worry about as long as everything goes right, but they're not magical.
Yeah, exactly. It's not magic. The main thing is that there are definitely still servers. It's just there's a service provider, typically one of your big cloud providers, who would be looking after the servers for you and essentially providing you a platform for which you can write applications and just let you focus on writing the application logic and not having to worry about other code around, for example, security or high availability or things like that, because that's all built into the platform. So it's really just a platform.
So the cool thing now is we could just go ahead and talk about whatever we want, because everybody changed the channel as soon as I said it's not magic.
Like, yeah, totally. It is magic. It's completely magic. Actually, on one level, what was the saying?
Any sufficiently
so science is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah.
Historically, the effort people used to have to put in to create an application that had 24/7 availability, that had, for example, PCI DSS compliance, was very large. If you go back 10 years, 15 years, people were physically renting space in data centers and having ops teams do all of this stuff for you. With this whole kind of serverless revolution, or it's more an evolution, to be honest, a single individual developer can now build a fault-tolerant, scalable, secure application without having to interact with multiple teams to coordinate all the moving parts underneath, because that's all done by someone else. It can almost be seen as magic in that respect, particularly if you've got that history where it used to be an absolute pain to get these kind of applications up and going. So yeah, if you had to skip 15 years, you'd think it's magic. If you are new into tech, you just assume this is the way it's always been done.
Are we going to shake our fists and be like, oh, kids today, they don't know how good they've got it?
Exactly. They definitely don't know how good they've got it.
If I'm just now getting involved and we're like, wow, serverless, I'm totally sold. Where can I go for resources? Where can I go to learn more? Ideally, in a service provider agnostic kind of way. Are there any great ones, great resources from folks who are providing serverless services?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a mix and match. It depends how far where you want to go with it. So if you look at the greater serverless landscape, you have something called functions as a service, and people like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and smaller companies like Auth0, they all have their own offering around that.
I love how you've kind of laid out a Dungeons and Dragons map to be like, we're looking out across the wide lands of serverless.
Yeah, exactly. It's because it's not just, because one of the problems people have is always think like serverless is functions as a service, and they always think particularly of the Amazon product Lambda, but it's a far bigger landscape than that, because beyond functions as a service, you have something like Firebase from Google, which is a backend as a service. Or you look at MongoDB, they've got a service called Atlas, which is a database as a service. And you've got companies like Pusher or PubNub who have these messaging as a service platforms, which you can all use to build a serverless application. You could go all in on Amazon and just use their services, or you can use something like WebTask from Auth0 for your functions as a service, or you can use FaunaDB, which is another database as a service.
I love how you're being very careful not to recommend any of them. You're like, oh, you could go here or here.
It's all use case dependent.
Would you be willing to say, oh, I'd recommend checking this out first, maybe if someone's a beginner?
So if someone's a beginner, actually probably a really good start is a new service called code.xyz, XYZ for the Americans amongst us.
You had me at the novelty TLD. Yeah, code.xyz.
That's by a company called Stanley out of San Francisco. What they really focus on is a really good user experience for beginners in the serverless landscape. If you're a JavaScript developer and you've got some basic rudimentary JavaScript or Node.js, I wouldn't even say Node.js, even if you're just a front-end JavaScript dev and you want to build a backend for your web app, go check out code.xyz. You'll be able to, within minutes, be able to get an API up and running with a few lines of code and literally just clicking the button run, which will deploy your API, document it for you, and give you a URL you can then call from your web application. It's an incredibly well documented platform. It is limited in what it can do. It's Node.js only. It's really just around building APIs, but it is incredibly easy to get up and going. And I think if you're a JavaScript dev, start there. And once you get comfortable, just with writing logic and letting the platform handle everything else, and then you can maybe look at the other platforms, but that gives you a really good starting place.
Now, I'm going to ask you some more questions about serverless and getting into the community and getting started. But it sounded like in the background we had a very, very short cameo from a guest star.
Yes. That is, if anyone follows me on Twitter, it's my Twitter account is a 50% Lily-based account, and that would be my 16-month-old Hungarian Vizsla that is now falling asleep next to me. She had a little bark as she heard someone go past.
So we create sketch notes to summarize each episode, and I just wanted to make sure our artist got a fantastic opportunity to put a puppy somewhere in that art. Dear listener, if you want to check out the art, find us on Twitter at @PursuitPod. So, is it more challenging to sort of get your first API up and running using something like Code XYZ, or more challenging to manage a 16-month-old puppy?
It's definitely more challenging to manage a 16-month-old puppy, though she's calming down as she gets older. I think just to go on the whole adoption curve with serverless, there's a...
Oh, I thought you were going to say the adoption curve with puppies. I was down for either.
Well, we can do adoption curve with puppies too.
Let's start with the adoption curve for serverless. Let's compare that to the adoption curve with puppies.
So when you get a puppy, you basically have to look after it 24/7. The first 4 weeks you've got it. If you get it 8 weeks, it can't really go out because it still needs its inoculations. So it's with you, been taken away from its mom, and just wants attention, pees everywhere, does its business everywhere, and it needs to be trained, disciplined, but also needs love and attention. So it's a bit of a fine line. And also, going to work and things like that can be a bit challenging with a young pup. It's best not to be left alone when they're really young. Compared to serverless, you can get an API up and running really, really quickly.
You don't have to carry it with you everywhere you go. You don't have to let it pee all over your house.
No, that's it. You kind of let it get up and going, and you'll be able to get a back end for your web application up really, really quickly using a serverless platform.
Whereas the back end of your puppy is going to be doing whatever it wants, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost an inverse relationship, because the deeper down the serverless rabbit hole you get, and the more confident you get, you're going to start doing things out of your comfort zone, and you're going to start having problems, challenges that need to be resolved. Whereas as a puppy gets older, it kind of calms down and gets more comfortable and becomes less needy. So yeah, there's kind of this inverse relationship.
So you mentioned that you run some meetups and some conferences really focusing on serverless. What kind of things would you cover? Or would your speakers cover? I don't expect you to do all of it.
I tend to be the default backup speaker if I have someone cancels at the last minute. So I probably speak at them more than I want to, but that's fine. In terms of the meetups, I'll typically try and focus on real-world use cases, people using serverless platforms in production today, or just someone having fun. I think maybe there's too often the projects we kind of work on are all a bit too serious sometimes, and maybe we need to have a bit more fun with some of the projects. So if someone's talk about, we've had people come up and talk about a hackathon project that they did at their office, which never went into production, but it was just a fun process.
Oh, nice.
That might be engaging.
So like a split between deadly serious, this is how we built and scaled this, and like we made something that joke orders pizzas?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. There was one company, not more practical than anything else, they just got tired with filling in expense forms, so they built a little serverless app to handle their expenses for them, taking a photo and uploading it all the way through to their platform without using any other third-party software and things like that. Chatbots are a very typical serverless use case as well. Lots of joke bots around and things like that.
So fantastic. And based on your extremely British accent, I'm going to guess that for somebody to come to your meetup or to your conferences, that they should probably be based in the UK.
So I run the Serverless London meetup, which is the second biggest serverless meetup in the world behind San Francisco.
Oh, so you've just got to edge in there.
Yeah, we were bigger than San Francisco, but they overtook us. So being number 2 to San Francisco, I'll be okay with that.
But you all pay half as much for your pizzas and beer, so it's all fine.
Yeah, exactly. And we do run our meetups more often. So we run 8 a year, take a break over summer and a very short break over winter. It's always a challenge trying to run a meetup in summer in London because there's no one around and everyone would rather be in a beer garden or in a park. We tend to take a 2 to 3 month break over that period for the meetups.
But there's conferences as well, not just the meetups.
So when we decided to take the break for the meetups, last year we decided to run JeffConf because there was an in-joke with another member of the community, a guy called Paul Johnson. He wrote a blog post saying we could have called it anything. We might as well have called it Jeff because a lot of people were complaining about the name serverless. And
because it's not magic.
Yeah, exactly. It's not magic.
Look, I can see I can't see the servers, but I'm fairly sure they're out there. Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely out there. So yeah, we ran JeffConf last year in July last year. That went really well. You were there. Really appreciate your pitching in. But yeah, that was 6 weeks from, hey, let's do a small little conference to actually running, and we had about 180 people.
Wait, back that way up. You had 6 weeks between, a conference would be great.
Yeah.
And then getting 180 people in the same place at the same time to all do yeah.
Yeah.
Was that a very relaxing process?
Yes and no, because I think one of the big things is we decided not to set our expectations too high. I think we said this is community focused. We made it really cheap. It was £35 to attend.
That's maybe for folks in the US, 40, 45 USD.
Yeah, about $45 around there, $50, something like that.
That's incredible for a tech conference.
Yeah, well, it was only a one-day single-track conference. So what we really did is we've just focused on having mainly local speakers. I think only 2 speakers flew in and 1 or 2 people got a train in, which brings the cost down if you're not paying for a lot of international speakers. And then having one day means you only have to feed people for one day. You're only paying for a venue for one day, things like that. And we were very fortunate to use a 196-year-old church in Hoxton called St. John's. And if you've ever been to modern churches these days that are still operating, they all tend to have great AV systems. So we got this church really cheap, could fit everyone, and had its own AV. That brought the cost down. Instead of, renting all that stuff yourself and going through all the hassles of doing that, having this church available that was available to us at a great rate was probably the key to actually being able to do it so quickly. So we just hit it lucky with the venue more than anything else.
And yeah, so it's still JeffConf? Is JeffConf still a thing?
No.
JeffConf is dead.
JeffConf has evolved.
Oh, that's much better than dead.
Yeah, it is. Jeff is not dead. Jeff is still alive. Jeff just has friends now.
Oh, friends?
6 friends, 7 plus Jeff, or 6 plus Jeff. We still need to name Jeff's friends, to be honest. So the original JeffConf was a bit of an in-joke around this blog post. And then it kind of accidentally took off. One of our volunteers from the London conference last year decided to run one in Milan. One of the speakers at the Milan conference decided to run one in Hamburg. And we accidentally had 3 JeffConfs by February this year.
You accidentally started an international chain of community-focused tech conferences?
Isn't that how they all start?
I'd love to see more accidents like this.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if there's that many people who sit down and say, plot, we're going to create this worldwide series of community-based conferences. At least the community stuff has to be organic. It has to have people who want to do it in their own regions, which is what's happened with JeffConf, which has now been renamed to Serverless Days. There were 2 reasons for the renaming. One was, one of our aims is to try and broaden the community, bring people into the serverless community and just learn this way of building applications. And first of all, the people who are interested but don't have any knowledge of serverless are not going to associate Jeff with serverless.
Oh, yeah. You say, wow, I really want to learn a new technology, but I've never heard of this Jeff.
Yeah, exactly. And there's quite a funny story about the first Jeff Conf. Chris Munns from Amazon Web Services flew in from the States, and he landed the day before the conference and had to explain to border control, passport control, why he was in the UK. And he started off with, well, he's attending this conference called Jeff Conf. And then he had to explain that it was actually a joke on the word serverless. So then he had to explain to this officer what serverless was. He said it took him 20 minutes to get through passport control because of the random naming.
Just in case anyone from the UK Border Agency is listening, I've never had any complaints, but I bet he flew into Heathrow.
Yeah, he did. He did. To be honest, I think the officer was just more interested than anything else. So yeah, that was part of it, is that we wanted it to be a name people could recognize easily and could understand exactly what it is. You know, it's a one-day conference around serverless, so serverless days makes sense. And then the other bit is having a conference named after a guy called Jeff isn't very inclusive for people not called Jeff.
There's only so many Jeffs out there.
Exactly.
You've shown them love. It's time
to be honest, there's probably too many Jeffs out there. We need less Jeffs and more other people. No offense to all the Jeffs.
Lovely Jeffs.
And there's multiple spellings of Jeff as well. They get very upset if you spell their name the wrong way.
I'm willing to believe you, but I've only ever seen the one Jeff. Well, the one spelling of Jeffs.
There's Jeff with a G. Jeff.
Oh.
G-E-O-F. Jeff.
So Jeff isn't Jeff anymore, and Jeff has friends. Does that mean you're just picking a new first name each conference?
No. So the conferences are called Serverless Days.
That's a little bit more straightforward.
Yeah, it's very straightforward, a little bit boring. But one of the things we did with the first conference is I got Ashley McNamara, who now works at Microsoft, to draw a mascot. She had a bit of downtime between roles. And Ashley, if you're free, please can you draw a mascot for me? And she did, very kindly did. And that mascot was for the Serverless London News Group.
What does the mascot look like? I've seen her draw some gophers, which I wrongly called hamsters.
Yes. It's not a gopher. It's nothing like a gopher. It's kind of a robotic fox. I just basically asked Ashley. It's a London Serverless user group. And that was kind of the artistic direction I gave her, which is slightly more than 0. And that's what she came up with.
So Jeff has friends now. Are they more mascots?
Yes.
Oh.
The lovely Kate Holden approached her because Ashley's now far too busy to actually draw mascots for small conferences. So I approached Kate Holden, who I followed for years on Twitter. I think I potentially follow her because of you, actually, Jess.
We're actually going to go ahead and get some artception going on because she's going to be drawing the sketch notes summarizing this podcast where we talk about her drawing the mascots for your conference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Kate's great. So the only way you actually commission art these days is via Twitter DM.
Yeah.
So DM Kate, and then we started emailing and said, well, we're going to be renaming this conference. Jeff needs friends because we want more than just Jeff in the community. So she drew 6 more friends. There's an octopus, there's a unicorn, there's an owl, there's a moth, a dinosaur, and there's an anteater.
Oh. And you said they all need names.
Yes, they all do need names.
So like the first person to just come in and be really bold and say, oh, this is the name, that's just going to get to stick, right?
We have attempted to run we've asked the internet to name them, but that hasn't taken.
Oh, no.
That hasn't worked out so well.
Was it like serverless face?
I think that was potentially the second entry on the web form we put up. There was a lot of serverless face. Despite actually saying, please don't call him serverless face.
Are you brand new to the internet? This seems like a rookie internet move. Oh, please don't do this thing.
I've heard about it before.
The internet.
Yeah. So we'll see. So we do have a type form. We're still waiting for people to fill it in if they want to name Jeff's friends. And then once we've got enough names, we're basically going to get a shortlist and then put a vote out on the shortlist. But
any idea where I can find this type form?
I've got to find it. I do have it. I just can't remember where. Hang on. Give me 2 seconds.
It's okay. Like if you can't find the type form quite yet, you can go ahead and tweet it out later. Where do you live on Twitter?
So my Twitter handle is @IamStan because when I was at school, I don't know if this happens in the US, but basically I was always called by my surname. I went to school with a whole bunch of people who never actually knew my first name was Anthony. Everyone just called me Stanley.
You do have kind of a double-barreled first name in both ways, though.
Yeah, you should never trust someone with two first names.
I'll keep that in mind. Never to trust you.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, when I first got my Twitter account, lots of people still call me Stan. And so at the time, I just went, I am Stan, because I couldn't get Stan. So that was my variation on it. But these days, 11 years later, very few people call me Stan, but the Twitter account still exists.
11 years later, no. Politely, Twitter's not been around for a decade. I have to go lie down for a little while.
Yeah, it's scary.
Have a think.
It's scary. I'm just very glad I wasn't on Twitter when I was like 16, 17 years old, because then my handle would be a lot worse.
Cool dude XX3 420.
Yeah.
You can't use emoji in it.
Can you now? You couldn't at the time, but yeah.
I don't think so.
No, you can have it in your name, not in your handle.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So what's next, either for Serverless, which might be a big question, or for you, the conferences and the community?
Yeah, so the conferences are taking off. So since we've kind of rebranded Serverless Days and we did a public shout out to people to actually run their own in different areas, we've already had 4 Serverless Days this year, with another 5 scheduled to happen this year, with another 21 planning for next year.
Wow. 21.
Yeah, or 21 on top of the 9 that will happen this year.
Oh, on top of So is the deal that if you start an international tech conference sensation that you have to or get to go to all of them?
I had grand ideas of attempting to do that, but when Tel Aviv and Auckland were within, I think, a week of each other, at the same time, Ooh. I was due to be in St. Lucia in the Caribbean. It proved a bit of a challenge.
I got jet lag listening to that sentence.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to try and do as many as I can. The European ones are a lot easier. Definitely want to try and get across to the US this year. There's Serverless Days in Toronto, Portland, and Seattle all within 4 weeks of each other. So I try and convince myself that I should go and spend 4 weeks out in the States. But I don't think Lily would approve. That's my one worry with going for so long. But I'll definitely do 1 or 2 of those.
Do you know what? This is not something I would offer most guests. And I know that this is just me really putting myself out there, but I will totally watch your happy dog.
As long as you're happy sharing a bed with her. She likes to get under the covers and snuggle. And
oh, that sounds brutal. Just absolutely terrible.
Yeah. And
luckily, my husband doesn't listen to this podcast, so I can absolutely say we're willing to do that.
Totally. And she also requires about a 10-kilometer walk every day. So,
ooh, you know what? I've just double checked our schedule, and we are at a wedding all 4 of those weeks.
It is wedding season.
Straight through, yeah. 10 kilometers a day.
Around there. We don't actually take her for those walks. She's a very spoiled pup, and she goes to daycare.
Is there like a serverless version of dogs? Sort of, where all of that overhead is mostly taken care of by someone else? Or is that how doggy daycare works?
That's pretty much it. So she gets exercise every day at doggy daycare. She plays with her buddies. She's become a minor Instagram model because they always put up photos of the daycare on Instagram. So we watch her vicariously through Instagram. And when she comes home, she's had her exercise and she's chilled and she just wants to, have a bit of a chat and then a lie down.
Yeah, it sounds like Serverless is relatively easy, whereas puppies sound pretty hard.
Yeah, this breed in particular. The joys of getting a hunting dog and living in a small London shoebox.
If somebody wanted to see more about your conferences, your events, or your work, where could they find you online?
So obviously Twitter at I am Stan. I'm on Medium as well, under I am Stan as well. Then the conferences are serverlessdays.io And there'll be links to the other conferences within that. There's a map of all the Serverless Days conferences on there. So if you go to serverlessdays.io/map, you'll be able to see where all the Serverless Days are happening all over the world. And if you want to run one yourself, just go to serverlessdays.io/organize, the UK spelling with an S. And
I've been here long enough where I completely forgot that we spell those differently.
Well,
do we do it with a Z? With a Z?
Yeah.
The Z.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the...
I was risking my passport there for a second.
Yeah. You can see the website was built by someone from this side of the pond. Please don't judge my web design skills. That's not my... it's not my area of expertise, shall we say.
There is no judgment at all. Well, from me. Our dear listener may have other ideas.
Yeah. I'm partially responsible for many of the horrific Serverless Days websites out there. Because along with the conferences just being adopted in this ad hoc manner, the really not great website I built for the first JeffConf ended up being forked multiple times for the other JeffConfs. And I had to keep apologizing to the team running the Milan conferences, say, like, I really am sorry for this code and this website. I did have to do the same thing to the team running Hamburg. So I decided to rewrite the conference website with Serverless Days. And I haven't really learned from my mistakes, and I should have spent more time on it. So now I'm spending time apologizing to even more people about my poorly written website. But it works, so people can get the information they need. So
fantastic.
It meets that. It's not built in any fancy framework, so it's not that maintainable, but people are able to decipher my interesting code. So
we've gone from spelling organized with an S levels of British to apologizing on top of your apologies levels of British. You're mere steps away from being honorary Canadian. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you, dear listener, for joining us. If you come on back on Thursday, we'll have a brand new episode for you. Till then, you can check out the sketch notes on Twitter at PursuitPod. I've been your host, Jessica Rose.